The aim of this video is to show how I would go about blending a number of images together to overcome a difference in exposure. Here we have an image of two waterfalls, one smallish waterfall and one a little bit larger. Neither of them are very large, but they're both nice little waterfalls. So I've taken them with a 14mm lens, which has worked out really well. Good depth of field and it's nice and sharp. Exposure is at f11, and the first image I took was at 160th of a second. The second one was 80th of a second. This one here now is at 40th of a second. They're all at 100 ISO. Now the next one is at a 20th of a second, and the one after that is at 1/8 of a second. So you'll see this one, the larger waterfall of the two, is out in bright sunlight and is very much overexposed. And the last image, which is showing the small waterfall, quite well exposed, is at a 1/5 of a second. I now download these into, or upload them into Camera Raw, or you could use Lightroom. They're very similar. And I make a few adjustments, the white and the black, and camera adjustments, and then I'll do some sharpening, increase the size of the image up to 100%, and do a little bit of sharpening and a little bit of luminance there just to get rid of some noise, but there wasn't much noise really in this image and then we go and synchronize them so that all those little alterations were created in one and then copied onto the other 5 images. Now we're just downloading these images into Photoshop. Now we've got the photos loading into Photoshop. We're going to arrange them all so that they're all in the same file in layers. So here we have one, the bottom layer is the 173 image. We click on the second one, drag it up to the 173 and bring it back down again. And on the way back down again, make sure that you hold the Shift key, and then that will ensure that it aligns itself right on top of the image below it. Now from there on we go and put layer masks beside each layer in the Photoshop layers palette, and then we're going to work on each individual layer. So what we can do here is use the brush tool to erase some of the image from that particular layer which is active at the moment. And as we do this, you'll see that on the layer mask that where it is white, it goes to black. That means that when it's black, there is no image there. You see that there's just a little bit there, so which means that we're only using the waterfall, the larger of the two waterfalls, on this image. So each image we will just select a small part of it, and we'll erase the rest to a certain extent. You don't have to erase it to 100%, but sometimes it might be 40%, 50%, or 100%. So as we're going along here, you'll see that the image below the image, or below the layer that we're working on at the moment, the image which is on the layer underneath is showing through. And if we do find that we erase something that we didn't really need to erase, we can just go to Command Z and go back, undo that little piece of the work that we just did. It is always a good idea too, when you're doing this, to every now and then take your finger off the mouse, so that if you do have to go back again with Command Z, you're not going back a long way, just a small way. To make the brush smaller or larger, which I've just done there, you hold down the Option and Control keys on the Mac and just move the cursor to the left or to the right to make the brush smaller or larger, and then up and down to increase or decrease the hardness of the brush. In a case like this, I feel it's always best to work with the brush at 0%. Working with the brush at 0% means that there will be no sharp edges to the areas that you are erasing, and so it's almost undetectable where the edges are, where the areas have been erased. Now, as we continue along here, just modifying this image, using parts of it and not using other parts of it, and just a little piece there where it had been erased, and just by changing the foreground background colours from black to white, with the white becoming the foreground colour, we can just go back over again and restore part of the image that we had erased. So it's a little bit similar to how we would use the Command Z, whereas Command Z will restore everything in the last movement that we made, using the white foreground colour with the brush. Means that we can just restore part of the image that had been erased. So that's the beauty of using the mask. You can go back and make alterations to the image that you have erased, and gives you a lot more control. So just going back over the little waterfall here now, with the foreground colour white, means that we can just paint back in some of the density in that water there, where the sun is hitting it brightly, making it just a little bit, clipping a little bit too much. Now this is the last layer mask, so we'll just make some more alterations here to the dark areas in the image, just bringing out some detail in the deep shadows. Just taking that down to smaller size using Option, Control keys, both held down at the same time, and moving the cursor to the left or to the right to make the brush either larger or smaller. That's Option Control on the Mac. It's going to be something different, but very similar on the PC. So we're nearly finished with this now, just making a few last little adjustments, and then when we turn on all of the layers, we'll be able to see the final image. This is an instant where the opacity of the brush has been altered just a little bit. I've taken it down from 100% down to about 40%, 40 to 50%, and it will then just erase that part of the image slightly, not full, not a full erasal. And here we're just going to undo a little bit again on that same particular part of the waterfall where it is just slightly overexposed. So that is pretty much the final image. There is one last addition I'd like to make to this image, and that is to create a vignette around the photograph. Do that by highlighting the top layer and then hit the key at the bottom of the layers palette, which is a new layer, and that creates a new empty layer. Then we go up to the elliptical marquee tool and mark the feather of it at around about 200 to 350, something like that. I've got 300 on this one. That really depends on the size of the image. And then we go from corner to corner, opposite corners, and then that will, as you can see, create an oval of the marching ants, which means the inside of that oval is the active area. So we want the outside of it to be active. So to do that, we go Command-Shift-I, and that inverses the active area. With that area inversed now, we take the paint bucket with the black being the foreground colour and drop the paint into that area there. We then go to Command-D to get rid of the marching ants and go back to the move tool up the top there. Now we need to just reduce the opacity of that layer. If we turn it off, we can see that there is no vignette there, but now if we turn it back on again and we just remove or reduce the opacity, we can get it down to 0% or up to 100%, but somewhere around about the 50% mark is looking pretty good. You don't want the vignette to be noticeable at all. It should not really be a feature of the image. It's just there so the viewer is something in the back of the head that says or encourages the viewer to look into the inside of the photograph. Just one last little thing is to erase part of the vignette there, which is covering a little bit of one of the main subjects of the image. So there we are, all done, and now we can show you the final image. I hope you have learnt a little from this. Please like and subscribe. Check out my channel in the coming weeks. We'll have some more activity there, and then there's my website as well. Thank you.